New England PGA Tour, European Tour, although we're not going to get into any European Tour stuff today because we've got too much other stuff to talk about. But everything you need to know about golf is right here on our show. Listen in. You go to the course. You have something to talk about with the people you might play with. You got something to talk about in the country club, so listen up. Today, we're going to go over the Wells Fargo. We're going to do a little recap of that. Lucas Glover happened to win that event in a playoff with an unbelievable beard, and I got to respect the beard that he's got going on because that is just amazing to have the ability to keep that on for as long as he had, and I just went through a little period myself where I had a beard, so I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I did shave it, but Lucas, keep it. We're going to have Peter Loiko on, the executive director of the First Tee of New Hampshire. He's going to talk about an event that's going to happen right here in New Hampshire next weekend. That's an awesome event, and he's going to provide you with all the information you need to get out there and watch that event. Of course, we're going to talk about the Players' Championship, which is actually going on right now. We have it on the TV, Golf Channel Live, watching the event go on. Yesterday's round delayed from rain, so they're finishing up the third round right now. They'll finish up the fourth round this afternoon. Hopefully it doesn't get too dark. And there are a lot of people in the mix. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to be an unbelievable Sunday as far as that goes, so we'll talk about that. Let's jump right into the Wells Fargo at Quail Hollow. Lucas Glover, as I said, won that in a playoff. Third week in a row playoff on the PGA Tour. Now, if that doesn't bring some excitement to the golf fans out there, I don't know what can. I guess if today ends in a playoff, it'll be even better. But to have three playoffs 3 weeks in a row, amazing drama. The interesting thing about this playoff is Lucas Glover finishes up his round with a par on the 18th. He gets interviewed by CBS. I want to give the right station credit. Gets interviewed by CBS, and he says, Jonathan Byrd is out there right now. I spoke to Jonathan this morning. They were teammates at Clemson. They know each other very well. I spoke to Jonathan. I guarantee he's going to bird the 18th hole to force a playoff. What happens? Sure enough, Jonathan Byrd birdies the 18th hole to force a playoff with him.
That's knowing your teammate right there.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely know each other and know each other's game well. They go back to the 18th hole. Lucas pipes one down the middle. Jonathan pipes one down the middle. Jonathan Byrd pulls his second shot left, has an almost impossible flop shot to get it close to the hole from a really, really tricky lie right outside of a bunker. Hits that to about 12 feet. Lucas puts his second shot to about 20 feet, and Jonathan Byrd 3 putts, Lucas Glover 2 putts to win. Now, Lucas left himself a little bit of work on that last putt. I think he was shaking over that when I could see the beard trembling a little bit on the TV watching that putt. But he had putted great all week, had drove it great. So he eventually finished that out. And it's good to see Lucas Glover back in the winner's circle. The U.S. Open winner a couple of years ago, good to see him swinging well. Got the putter going, made a few minor adjustments, as I said, and putted well all week long. Some other notables in that, Rory Sabatini. If you pay attention to golf at all, you know what's going on with Rory. He's facing a possible suspension. I don't want to report that he has been suspended because I don't know. He was in contention this past week at the Wells Fargo. He's in contention this week at the Players, and he's facing a possible suspension for allegedly, I want to make sure we get this right here, allegedly berating a volunteer official at a tournament a couple weeks ago for marking his ball with a soda container. So what happens on the PGA Tour, guys tee off, there's volunteers out there that mark their ball. He hit it in the rough. The volunteer marked it with a soda container. Rory came up on this kid who was a kid, I think he was 17, 18 years old, and just started absolutely, from reports, allegedly, absolutely cursing the kid out. Sean O'Hare was in the group. Pat Perez was in the group. They went over to Rory, tried to calm him down. Apparently, the altercation continued between the players. We don't really know what happened, but Rory was really, really upset about that soda bottle marking his ball. So that leads us to the question. He might be suspended. He's probably certainly been fined, but we don't know. Nobody knows. Only guys on the PGA Tour know, or certain select people within the organization know. Do you think that the PGA Tour should disclose this kind of information? Like the NBA, like the NFL, when players get suspended or players get fined, do we need to know as the public how much, what it was for specifically, how many weeks they're suspended? Is that something everybody out there wants to know? Or Chris, what do you think? Do you think that they should disclose this type of information?
Yeah, sure. I don't think golfers are special in that regard. I mean, it's a sport like anything else. But the thing is, the Sabatini case was sort of an anomaly in that when there's suspensions usually in golf, it's not because a golfer was yelling at somebody. It's usually because they they screwed around a little bit, or maybe they were like, kicked their ball out of the rough or did something. You know what I mean? Like,
They were involved in something that wasn't good. Is basically what you're trying to say.
It's a rule violation, basically, and those should be public because people should know what the rules are. This is a little bit different because this was Sabatini just throwing a temper tantrum, and I guess. Yeah, you should. They should make it public that sort of behavior won't be tolerated, and if you do it, you'll be suspended. They don't have to tell you exactly how long you're suspended for or how much they're going to fine them, but they should let everyone know that they will.
And I'm going to agree with you on this in part here because I think the suspensions I want to know about. When guys aren't playing in tournaments because they're suspended, I do want to know about that. There was an incident in Vegas last year at the Justin Timberlake tournament where Anthony Kim was allegedly at a blackjack table, maybe using some language that wasn't appropriate, maybe berating a dealer. All of a sudden, Anthony Kim withdraws from the tournament. Now, did the PGA Tour make him do that? I don't know. It's all speculation. We
cannot have that kind of tomfoolery in the Justin Timberlake tournament.
Right. No shenanigans with JT. He doesn't play those kind of games, and he was in a casino out there, and I love Vegas, so I know how it can get out there. Things, Anthony Kim has been known to indulge in some things as well. So, things were probably flowing. He got a little bit upset. Probably wasn't betting $10 a hand, I would guess. However, I want to know if the PGA Tour came down on him and said, hey, you got to withdraw from this tournament. We don't accept this kind of behavior. You're suspended for the next 2 weeks. And we didn't see Anthony probably for another couple of weeks. Rumor was he was hurt. It was some tournaments he doesn't usually play. But I want to know if Rory gets suspended and he can't play for 3 weeks, let me know. And let me know why. I don't want to know every little detail, but let me know. It's because he cursed some kid out, and it just wasn't right, obviously. As far as the fines go, I could care less. I think fines happen on the PGA Tour all the time. These guys can get fined for wearing shorts on a Tuesday at a Pro-Am. They can get fined for using the wrong golf ball. They can get fined for a variety of things. I could care less. That doesn't
wearing shorts on a Tuesday.
Yeah, well, when you play in the Pro-Am, you show up in shorts, David Duval style, some camo shorts, and hey, you're going to get fined. The PGA Tour doesn't want to project that image. That's fine. I don't care about that. I don't want to know about that. But I do want to know about the suspensions. If we don't see guys for a couple weeks, let me know. Let me know that he's suspended for 3 weeks. I can expect him back on this certain date. The next thing that happened at the Wells Fargo, which was really interesting to me, and this brings up another point that's been going on for, I would say, in the mainstream for about a year now, ever since the Dustin Johnson Dustin Johnson incident at the PGA last year, and it has to do with rules violations. Patrick Harrington teeing off on a par 3 was supposedly close to the tee markers. A fan who's sitting there suggests after the round that Patrick teed it up in front of the tee markers. Patrick is clearly not happy about this. Phil Mickelson was in his group. They have to go back, watch the video, examine the tee area, try to find the divot where Patrick teed it up. They go through this whole elaborate process that to me just didn't make any sense. And it begs the question, has this gone too far with fans getting involved in rules violations?
Since when do spectators get that sort of clout anyway to get a judge or somebody to come look at that sort of thing?
Well, apparently
can't any spectator just say anything then?
Exactly, and apparently they do in golf because people will call into tournaments and say, I saw this on TV. You need to go back and look at this and see if it's a rules violation. Or, as happened with Patty, somebody at the tournament can say, hey, this is a rules violation. They need to review this and assess the proper penalty. Now, I have to commend PGA Tour players on the whole, because when they commit violations, they typically call them on themselves, and they don't try to get away with stuff that they think is a rules violation. There was a great example last year where Brian Gay called the rules violation on himself in a hazard to lose the tournament. If he hadn't called the rules violation on himself, he would have had a chance to win the tournament. He called it, did the absolute right thing, and ended up losing the tournament. And I just don't think that fans and spectators should have the ability to call in 3 days later and say, you know what? Patrick Harrington teed it up in front of the markers. He signed an improper scorecard. He's disqualified because the penalty for that is too great. Disqualification, it kills him as far as the tournament goes. And I think it's gone way too far as these fans and people getting involved with the sport and saying, you know what? He made a mistake here. Let's penalize him. And Chris, I got to get your opinion on this. I want to know what you think. I think it's gone way too far. It's out of hand. People that are watching the tournaments and at the tournaments, relax. These guys know when they break the rules, okay? There's a million people that are there that understand the rules much better than we do that know when these guys break the rules.
Right. There's how many cameras on these guys? There's how many people, just spectators there watching? and one guy noticed this. One guy noticed that he teed up a little and nobody else. Like who? That's just like boggles my mind. Imagine that in any other sport. Imagine a spectator tapping the umpire on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, I think that was strike 3." I mean, like, that never happens, and that's ridiculous that it should be allowed to. I understand that, like you said, golfers are, it's a gentleman's game for the most part, except for Kim there. But
and some other guys that we'll get to those guys later too. We're going to talk about Tiger.
It's a game of the civilized sportsman. However, it's just because these people are there watching the game and probably have, opinions about it. Most of the time, everyone's quiet. It's sort of a, civilized atmosphere. Sure. To just let any spectator in the crowd start dictating like rule violations and things like that is absolutely ridiculous. And I couldn't agree with you more.
And you made a great point about other sports. What other sport is out there where you can call in and say, look, Dick Bavetta, that was a charge. It wasn't a block. Look at the tape. Let's go back and look at it. Let's assess the penalty, because there were some calls in that Heat Celtics game that certainly were not appropriate.
I would have flooded the phone lines. I would still be on the phone now.
There would be millions of Celtics fans out there right now talking about some of the calls they made and how that series progressed. And there's no other sport that allows that. And the other issue is this. Now people want to do it because they want the media recognition.
Right.
They know that it's going to be on Golf Channel. And right now there's some guy who's probably listening to our show, or girl, I don't know who it was, we don't know who it was, that's sitting there saying, I'm the guy who called out Patty Harrington. Aren't I the coolest guy in America? And the answer is no, you're not. It's ridiculous. I can't believe that somebody would go to that extent. And I think as far as the conspiracy theory goes, you had a great one before the show. I don't know. What did you compare this to?
Oh, yeah. No, I have a theory on who this mystery whistleblower is. I believe he was hired by Shooter McGavin to follow Patty Harrington around and call him a jackass at every hole. And then tell the judges that he was cheating.
That's right. So, in the final round today, is somebody going to be hired to follow around the final pairing and disparage one of the players from playing well? Probably not. But it's gotten out of control, and the media is supporting it by perpetuating their publicity of the person who calls these rules violations in or makes these calls on the course. So if you're out there watching golf today and you notice a rules violation, please don't call in. They'll figure it out. If the guys break the rules, they know it, and they'll absolutely figure out what they need to do and how to assess that penalty.
It sets such a bad precedent.
And we're moving on because we're perpetuating this by talking about these people right now. So we're going to move on from that. We're going to stay away from it, and we're going to try to figure out where Rory McIlroy was last week at Quail Hollow. He was the previous champion. A lot of expectations on him as far as his performance there. Did not play well. For the most part, we didn't even know that he was in the golf tournament. The other guy that we needed to look at was Lee Westwood, and nobody really knew where he was at. He did receive a little bit of coverage, but basically these guys were just ignored, and we're talking about some of the top players in the world and the number one in the world. So the question is, where were those guys last week? I wanted to see them step up and have a strong performance before they left the U.S., and that they left the U.S. because of a weird rule that only allows European Tour members to play in a certain amount of events, and it's upsetting to me, and it bothers me. You can probably tell by the tone of my voice that I wanted to see those guys at the Players this week. I wanted to see them there, and they're not there because they chose to play the Quail Hollow the week before. Rory, I can understand. He's going to play a tournament where he defends his championship. It was his first PGA Tour win. He's got good vibes on the course, but it seems to me that maybe the fact that they couldn't be here this week at the Players, well, they could, or they chose not to, bothered those guys a little bit last week and affected their performance and allowed them not to play well all week, and instead now they're gone. They're in Europe. I don't even know what they're doing this week. I'm not paying attention to them this week because I'm so upset at the fact that they're not playing this week at this great golf course that they have down there at TPC Sawgrass, which is just absolutely unbelievable. We're going to step aside here. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have Peter Loiko, the executive director of the First Tee on. We're going to talk about that event right here on WGAM.
All our hosts were really great sports stars in their day. Don't believe it? Just ask them. ESPN Radio and New Hampshire's best sports. WGAM, The Game.